As passive perks, the Techmarine can deploy tarantula turrets that appear around the map, deal a huge amount of damage, and make objective defense much easier. On top of that, his shoulder turret can perform gun strikes instantly without triggering an animation. He also has 3 armor bars, just like the assault and the tactical. As for the regular perks, the first column determines which shoulder turret you bring. The basic turret has a large ammo reserve, the precision turret deals noticeably more damage, and the plasma turret has less range and lower direct damage, but it gains area of effect damage. This also affects your gun strike damage. The precision turret makes it stronger, while the plasma turret makes it weaker. Right now, I can't recommend the plasma turret in patch 14.0 because it burns through far too much ammo for the damage it provides. It's decent against nearby minorities, but the basic turret can already handle them well, while also having much higher sustained DPS, so the real choice is between more damage and more ammo. One perk that is almost mandatory is replenishing salvo in the 6th column. Being able to regenerate your grenades on demand roughly every minute is easily one of the strongest perks in the game. A single melt-bomb can wipe out a cluster of extremis and majoris enemies and save a run. The first 4 columns also contain several equipment-focused perks that are surprisingly powerful. This allows you to build a dedicated explosive setup that plays somewhat similarly to the tactical's debuff-oriented playstyle. If you don't want to focus on explosives, Arc Cliff and Long Range Barrage in the 2nd and 3rd columns are excellent alternatives for boosting both melee and range damage. A useful detail is that Arc Cliff affects the charge attacks of the Power Sword, Shadow Stab on the Combat Knife, the normal heavy attack chain on the Power Axe, and the Omniscient Axis charge area attack. The most important team perk is Battlefield Repairs. The Techmarine has no health regeneration and barely any damage reduction, so the extra armor from this perk is incredibly valuable, especially because it benefits the entire squad. Combat Squad Resupply can also be very strong in an explosive build, or when your teammates provide healing or damage reduction, although it is definitely the more niche option. In the 5th column, Inexorable Salvo is an extremely important perk because getting staggered on the highest difficulty very often leads to death or the loss of a huge amount of health. My favorite Techmarine build combines this perk with the basic turret and one of the 2 signature perks that reduce ammo consumption, letting you keep the turret active almost constantly while remaining immune to stagger. If you don't want to use the turret to deal with minorities, always take the Strategic Gunstrike perk. It gives extra damage and prevents unnecessary ammo waste. I personally run it all the time, and Fortifying Salvo is something I only recommend if you specifically want to use the turret against minorities, although it is not a bad perk by itself. Finally, the 3 signature perks are all perfectly viable and come down to preference. The first gives extra ammo simply for playing normally. The second lets you manually designate where the turret fires while cutting ammo consumption in half. And the third provides a straight damage increase. I personally always choose Lethal Perimeter because it removes the enemy targeting reticles, which are large enough that sometimes make headshots harder to land. Not a massive issue, but worth mentioning. As for Prestige perks, Unflinching Focus is absolutely mandatory. It makes you invulnerable while repairing environmental tarantula turrets, and honestly, this should have been a passive effect from the start. Beyond that, I always recommend Steam Boost and Chain Headshots, plus a choice between Furious Gunstrike and Defensive Stance. Volatile Sentry is terrible because it only affects tarantula turrets when they explode. It's honestly hard to choose a truly bad primary weapon. If your goal is raw DPS, the Oculus can reach around 200 headshot DPS when you combine the Prestige perk that increases headshot damage, the perk that boosts long-range weapon damage, and the Techmarine's own class perk bonus. That is absurd, considering that most other bolters sit at roughly 110 headshot DPS. The downside is that its ammo economy is pretty poor. The Auto Bolter and the Incinerator are the weapons I recommend the least. They are not unusable, but the Auto Bolter doesn't hit hard enough to justify its spread, and the Incinerator is extremely niche. If you want area damage, you are usually better off taking the Plasma Pistol or just secondaries instead. For utility, I really like the Relic Heavy Bolt Rifle with grenades. It is excellent for controlling groups and applying stagger, especially in Siege mode, where majorities and extremist enemies tend to spawn very close together. I don't want to spend too long on secondary choices, but because the Techmarine focuses so heavily on accurate long-range shooting, the Inferno Pistol, Plasma Pistol, and Neo Volkite are all great options when headshots are not possible or enemies get too close. It is also worth remembering that your gunstrike damage depends entirely on your shoulder turret unless the turret is currently deployed, which gives you even more freedom when choosing a secondary weapon. For melee, the Power Sword has the potential to be the best melee weapon in the entire game if you master it. It does everything well, but it's also one of the hardest weapons to use because you need to manage both modes effectively. Remember that if you hold the attack button while dodging, you can switch modes during the attack itself. If the sword feels too complicated, or if you prefer something closer to the Assault Thunderhammer, the Omniscient Axe is a fantastic alternative. Holding the attack button performs a charge that knocks enemies back and opens minorities up for a gunstrike. If you release an attack again, you perform a rushing follow-up attack, and if that follow-up comes after hitting a majoris or stronger enemy with a charge, it turns into a multi-hit strike. Like the hammer, it also allows you to hold the attack button after a light attack to unleash an area attack. More importantly, the axe has a perk that prevents you from being staggered while charging it. In my opinion, the Omniscient Axe and the Power Sword in Power Stance are the two best tools in the game for dealing with minorities. The reason is exactly what you can see on screen. Both the axe charge and the sword's power attacks leave minorities open to a gunstrike, and because the Techmarine performs that gunstrike instantly, you can keep launching enemies away while constantly restoring armor. The Power Axe and the Combat Knife are both solid weapons in their own right. The axe focuses heavily on parries and handles minorities reasonably well with its heavy attacks and special attack. The knife is extremely fast, and its heavy attack chain applies an impressive amount of stagger for such a quick weapon. It struggles much more against groups of minorities. Personally, I will only use the knife if I were carrying an Inferno Pistol specifically to handle minorities. Otherwise, it is genuinely difficult to make a bad melee choice in this class. If you're unsure what to pick, the Omniscient Axe is an excellent default option. In PvE, the Techmarine is a hybrid between a pure damage class and a support class. He can apply debuffs in certain situations, provides environmental turrets, and his shoulder turret deals enormous damage. He's probably the best class in the game for defending objectives because Tarantula turrets are usually available in those areas. Behind the sniper, he's arguably the second strongest long-range damage dealer in the game, and he can also deal tremendous close-range damage whenever his shoulder turret is active. That turret is capable of deleting entire groups of extremist enemies, which is why ammo management is the single most important part of the class. That is also the reason I prefer the basic turret. It makes ammo management much easier and lets you stay stagger immune for very long periods, thanks to inexorable salvo. The Techmarine biggest weakness is that he has very few perks related to survivability, although Battlefield Repairs is excellent and benefits the whole team. Always repair Tarantula turrets as quickly as possible, especially once you have the Prestige perk that makes you invulnerable during the repairs, and you will see those turrets erase enemy groups with incredible speed. In PvP, the Techmarine performs a role that is somewhat similar to the Bulwark or the Heavy. He denies areas. The difference is that he does it by designating a zone with his turret and threatening anyone who enters it with extremely high burst damage. Managing this ability is just as important as it is in PvE. As long as the turret is available, enemies will hesitate before pushing you, which gives you much more time to hold an objective. If you waste the ability, you're basically just a tactician with one fewer grenade. A funny detail is that enemies can actually see the marked area, so you can use it for mind games. If they see the targeting sphere, they are less likely to move through that route. For example, you can mark the right side of a piece of cover and throw a grenade to the left, forcing opponents into the path you want them to take. For PvP weapons, it is honestly hard to go wrong, although I particularly like the Auto Bolter and the Oculus Carbine because of their higher DPS. For secondaries, it is difficult to pass up the Inferno Pistol for close-range encounters, although all of the options are generally viable. For melee, my favorite remains the Power Sword in Power Stance because it staggers from the very first hit, although melee choice matters much less than your firearm setup here. If you enjoy playing the objective but don't like slower classes or heavily melee-focused playstyles, the Techmarine is absolutely your guy, or well, your machine. I'm going to keep updating my older class guides for patch 14.0 and adding the ones I was still missing, so here's another Space Marine 2 guide. And well, this is YouTube, you already know what to do.